Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. My name is Haley Johnson and today we're talking about gestational diabetes. Super fun topic, but I had gestational diabetes with my first pregnancy. I've only had one pregnancy, but I just wanted to share what it was like to have gestational diabetes. If you have recently been diagnosed or you're curious what it was like to have it, I'm gonna spill it all today. So first things first is I do have a family history of gestational diabetes. My mom had it with all of her pregnancies. So I knew going into pregnancy that there is a high likelihood that I would have it as well because it is pretty genetic. I told my OB that on like my first baby appointment and she said, okay, well, we'll probably test you early for it and see if you have it. So while everyone else I think gets tested around 30 weeks, I got tested around 24 weeks and I got the beloved drink that you get that has like 50 grams of sugar or whatever. You drink it and then 1 hour later they take your blood to see your blood sugar levels. They called me and said that I wasn't an automatic fail. I think if your blood sugar is like above 190 or something, it's an automatic fail, but mine was around 180. So they wanted me to come back in to do the 3-hour glucose test just to make sure. Ooh, and the 3-hour test is rough. It's pretty rough. Instead of just giving you the 50-gram sugar drink, you then take a 100-gram sugar drink and you get tested every 3 hours. So what that looked like is they took a baseline before I had the drink and then I had the drink in front of them. I went out to my car and I waited for an hour, came back in, they drew blood again, and then I went out to my car, waited for another hour, came back in, and then I waited for another hour and came back in. So 4 total blood draws, and that is just to see obviously how your blood sugar does over the next 3 hours. And yeah, unfortunately, I failed that one. They didn't give me any specifics on numbers or anything, but I assume that my blood sugar just kind of stayed up there and maybe even rose higher than my 1-hour glucose test. So yeah, it was rough. Even though I kind of knew that I was going to have it, it was definitely a blow to find out that I had gestational diabetes. It's not the most fun thing to hear about in your pregnancy, but when they called me and told me that I had failed, they told me to call the diabetes clinic in my area and set up an appointment. So that's what I did. I think I went about a week later to the diabetes clinic and they basically just educate you and they tell you what's going on with your body and what needs to happen. They set goals with you, all of this stuff. It's a little overwhelming, obviously, because you're pregnant, you're already hormonal, and they're telling you that you need to completely change your diet and do different things to make sure that you manage your diabetes well. I mean, they were so super nice, but it's just the circumstances kind of stink. Obviously, with gestational diabetes, it just means that your body is not producing enough insulin, and that is largely part to your placenta. Your placenta is giving all of these hormones and it's blocking that a little bit, so you have more insulin resistance than you would normally. Also, disclaimer, I'm not a doctor, okay? I've just experienced this. So they tell you all of that, and then I also met with a dietitian who just kind of went over macros and different things that I needed to make sure that I knew about what I was eating. Basically, she just wanted to make sure that I was having enough carbs in my meals, because oftentimes when someone gets diagnosed with gestational diabetes, they kind of go all the way over and don't have any carbs, and that's not super great for your developing baby. So she gave me a bunch of macros, but really what was the most important was my carbs and how many I was taking. So she told me to have around 220 grams of carbs in a day, but I needed to spread that out over my meals and my snacks. So for breakfast, she wanted me to stay under 30 grams of carbs, and then snacks, it was like 30, 45-ish, and dinner was like 45. So it was different because your blood sugar is a lot more sensitive in the morning. So we stayed under in the morning, and then that's just really all that was important. While it is important to also get fats and proteins and things like that, she basically just said to focus on my carb intake. So when I would wake up in the morning, I would prick my finger, and that is my fasting glucose. And it was supposed to stay under 90, and it was consistently around 95, 100, whatever. So all of my other glucose readings were fine. I was supposed to prick my finger an hour after every meal, and it was supposed to be under 120, and I was doing great with that, and that was great. It was my fasting glucose, which is a little harder to control because there's nothing you're doing or eating. It's just when you wake up first in the morning, if your body is working too hard to produce insulin throughout the night, then you'll have a high fasting glucose, which I did. So they gave me a slow acting insulin to take every night for the rest of my pregnancy. And I don't remember the units or anything, but I would just like take some insulin, inject it in my leg before I went to bed. And that really helped bring down my morning numbers, which is obviously great. But I will say, for some reason, like being told that I needed to take insulin was harder than being told I had gestational diabetes. I don't know. It was like my body was failing me, and it was honestly pretty hard, but they were super helpful, super nice, and I was just grateful that my baby was getting the care that it needed and also that I needed. And then began a journey. I pricked my finger 4 times a day for the rest of my pregnancy, and I had to document every single number, and then a nurse would call me every week or 2 to get those numbers. And that is just to monitor everything, to make sure I have enough insulin, if I needed to up my insulin, if I needed a different kind of insulin, like just honestly making sure that everything is okay. And it was really hard because whatever I would eat, there would be a number an hour later that told me if it was good enough or not, if I failed or not. And it didn't only affect me, it also affected my baby. So whenever I would get a high reading, it was hard. It was rough on my mental health. And honestly, like I looked at food in a very unhealthily way, but it was for my baby. So I don't want to minimize the difficulty of monitoring everything you're eating every single day. It's hard, but what I did is I found foods that didn't ever spike my blood sugar. And I honestly ate the same thing every day. I would wake up and I would have Kodiak pancakes with peanut butter and a protein shake. So I got enough carbs and I got enough fats and protein. And that never spiked my blood sugar. Sometimes it would because different days are different and that's annoying. But for the most part, that is what I had every single morning. And then I would have a snack and it was usually like yogurt and cheese or apples and peanut butter or like some sort of like carrots and hummus or something like that. And because I needed to eat like consistently, which was also really hard. I needed to eat like every 2 hours to make sure that my blood sugar didn't just go, that it was more just like a steady line. And then for lunch, I would really like making sandwiches, but sometimes that would spike my blood sugar. So I would have wraps. Sometimes I would have like chicken nuggets or chicken sandwich or stuff like that. I worked in an office at this point, so I had to make sure that I brought a lunch, or if I went out to lunch, then obviously that is scary. I would go to Chick-fil-A sometimes though, because I would just get the nuggets and like a fruit cup on the side, and that never spiked my blood sugar, which was great. So if I ever did want to go out to eat, and then for dinner, I would always have some sort of meat, broccoli, and then like maybe a sweet potato or something like that. And dinners were honestly the same. I always had like chicken or steak, and my husband would always make it for me, and then a vegetable and some starchy side. And honestly, it was fine. Like when I was having meals consistently like that, it wasn't as hard because I knew it wasn't going to spike my blood sugar. And then I found desserts that also worked. Like I would have a cookie right after dinner and that would not spike my blood sugar. If I had a cookie like randomly in the middle of the day, obviously that spiked it like crazy. So I learned to have like sweet treats at the right time as well. But things are different for different people. Like something can spike me and not spike another person, and vice versa. So it was a little bit of trial and error in the beginning, and that honestly was so difficult. But once I found like my solid tried and true foods that did not spike my blood sugar, I was golden. And I'm someone that can literally eat the same thing every single day and not get tired of it. So that definitely worked in my favor. Then I also would have growth ultrasounds, which I only had like 4, I feel like, and they were every other month or something like that. And that is just to make sure that the baby isn't getting too big. All of my growth ultrasounds came back great. They never told me that my baby was too big or anything like that. And it was really fun to see him more regularly, because usually you just get an ultrasound at 20 weeks and then you don't see him again until your baby's born. So it was fun to get those, and honestly it was great to know that I was managing my diabetes really well, so he wasn't growing too big. Another thing that happens is you get non-stress tests starting at 30 weeks. I would go every single week to the hospital, and they would put a thing over my belly that monitors his heart rate for like 30 minutes to see if he is working too hard and see obviously if he's stressed out by the diabetes or anything like that. And those always came back great. I don't really know what happens if they don't. Maybe they induce you or something like that. But yeah, it felt like a lot of doctor's appointments because I was not only going to my OB every week at this point, but then I was also getting the non-stress tests, but they always came back fine and it worked out. However, the further I got into my pregnancy, the harder it was to manage my glucose. I was getting higher and higher readings the further I got into it. So my nurse put me on a fast-acting insulin, which I just take before my meal, and that just helps keep all my numbers low. And that was also kind of hard, but honestly, like I was already taking insulin every single night, so adding a little bit more insulin before my dinner was fine. But yeah, it is common that if you get further into your pregnancy, that it can be harder and harder for your body to produce insulin. So that happened to me. It's not super common to be on as much insulin as I was. For some reason, my body really struggled. And yeah, it was hard, but like, we got through it, and I have a healthy baby boy now, spoiler alert. So I went in for a growth ultrasound around 37 weeks and everything was looking good. But my doctor was like, yeah, I think you're on a lot of insulin, so maybe you should get induced 2 weeks early. And I was 37 weeks. So that meant giving birth that next week. So I was like, oh, okay, great. So yeah, I went in and I was induced at 38 weeks. I was considered a high risk patient because I had gestational diabetes. So they give you like special treatment, which was like super cool. But yeah, I was like the first on the list. I was called at like 5 in the morning, went in, and I was already dilated to a 2. So they started me on Pitocin and my body reacted really well to the Pitocin and everything was good. The only difference that I experienced in birth than a normal person would is they would take my blood sugar like every hour. And my body was working so hard during labor that my blood sugar was actually low, and that just meant more popsicles. So that was cool. But yeah, my blood sugar really didn't have that much of an issue giving birth. However, when people with gestational diabetes have babies, sometimes the babies can struggle also with maintaining their blood sugar. So they would prick his heel like every couple of hours to make sure that he was okay. And while the pricking his heel was so sad and hard, he never had any issue. His blood sugar was always great. And yeah, honestly, it was fantastic. Then they don't keep up on you. You have your baby, you go in at 6 weeks, and then they take your blood sugar again. Mine was back to normal levels, so I didn't have to do anything further. But I know that some people can develop type 2 because of gestational diabetes. I know that I am at a risk of type 2 because I had gestational diabetes. So I need to make sure that I'm constantly being healthy and monitoring it and making sure that I'm on top of what I'm eating. But if you've been recently diagnosed, and because I had gestational diabetes with my first, it's very likely that I will have it with future pregnancies. So I know that my journey is not over. It was really hard in the moment. I'm almost a year postpartum now, and I forget how hard it was. Just pricking your finger after every meal every single day is so taxing mentally, and you're already pregnant and tired and hungry and craving things. So just putting that on top of it is a whole another beast. So if you've recently been diagnosed, I know that you can get through it. It's hard, but honestly, like, it's temporary. For most people, it goes away as soon as you have the baby. So you just have to focus on the finish line and you'll get there, I promise. I got there. I thought I would never get there, but I did. So yeah, that is my experience with gestational diabetes. Kind of crazy, but I delivered a healthy baby boy. He turned out to be 7 pounds, which actually is crazy given you have gestational diabetes. People tend to have like 10-pound babies. So I was surprised at how small he was, but it shows that I really managed my diabetes really well. I worked closely with my nurses and doctors, and they kept me and my baby safe. So it was great. If you have any questions about gestational diabetes or what it was like or anything, please feel free to leave a comment. I would love to help in any way that I can and support you. I am no expert, but I have gone through it. And while it was hard, obviously it's worth it because you get your baby, and that's the most important part. Anyway, thank you so much for watching, everybody, and I will see you in the next one.